Should I get my last name?
Sure.
I don't know if I want y'all to know. My name's Otis. My name's Otis Williams. I am a federal government worker. Also served in the military, as well as I do internet radio on a show called Anika Tells All. I'm a co-host, aka the co-Otis, if you didn't know, and I also do stand-up comedy. I wanted to be a part of this because I saw bits and pieces of certain episodes, and I thought that it was dope to hear perspectives. I also enjoy listening to stories. A part of our history as people of color, Africa, they have something called a griot. And if you don't know what a griot is someone who passes down stories, each generation in tribes. And I thought that this was so special just to leave that mark and to be able to say, I left my story for everybody to see. I see the school that she goes to, I give it to them. It's very boring to the children, but that's a good thing. I love to see boring. I don't want her coming home like, Dad, it's a fight every day. I don't want her coming home like they found a knife or a gun on somebody. It's drugs, so-and-so got the yayo. I don't want to hear that. So I love that. I like the school. In terms of her, compared to when I went to school, social media started to develop. When we were upperclassmen, we had Black Planet, and that was it. And it was so archaic compared to what they have now. And so one of the biggest issues that I find myself dealing with is protecting her mind, but also protecting her from any predators or anybody who is, trying to prey on my daughter. Because when it comes to social media, when it comes to having children nowadays, the predators aren't only the people who are older or trying to prey on them through the internet. It's peers, it's people at school, people trying to get them to make bad decisions, relatives. So you have to take all of that into account. From a man's perspective, when you have a daughter, you have to talk to her more. You have to really understand them, or try to, because having a teenager, that's one of the hardest things to do, is understanding, especially if you have a teenager of the opposite sex. I do comedy, and I do comedy because of the way my mind talks about my inner dialogue, like kind of digests things from my past and growing up. So I grew up in a one-parent household the majority of the time. And I'd go from my mom's house to my dad's house. Now my dad's house, it was a two-parent household. It was my dad, my stepmom. And in my mom's house, like aunties, cousins, uncles would come, and it would be one of those situations where at the drop of a dime, she'd be like, Aunt such and such is gonna come stay with us, Uncle such and such. And you see their problems, you see who they are, you just experience them on a personal level, and you understand more. When you have that type of household, you understand people more and how different people are. Now on the opposite end, I have this two-parent household on my dad's side, and it's my dad, stepmom, and her son. And just the structure there compared to a different form of structure at mom's. And just seeing what they go through. Mom was in the county, dad was in the inner city, so I'd see a lot of inner city issues that I really didn't see at mom's. On mom's side, from mom's household, it was more of a family oneness, because although it was a one-parent household, grandmother was there, brothers, sisters, cousins, everybody. We'd have Thanksgiving all together. The whole family would come. We had Christmas together. And you just saw her bring the family together. And she learned from a grandmother, who lived with us at one point. So grandma would bring the family together. And so when both of them got together, it was nothing but unity. And that's one thing that I adopted from my mom's side. So as an adult, I may get a call from a cousin, hey cuz, hey, I got kicked out. Can I come stay with you? I'm all right, come on, And, cousins, people, other people, in my household is very similar to that structure. Now on my dad's side, dad lived in the inner city. Dad had a substance abuse problem. Stepmom did too. So I go to dad's house and I would see a lot of drug element. I would see a lot of negative things. And dad ended up going on a run from the FBI one summer. And we ended up going on a run with him. And so, unfortunately, as an adult, I kind of look over my shoulder when it comes to a lot of things now because of that experience that summer, because it really wasn't anything that I would want any child to go through. But for the most part, I cultivated a sense of family from my mom. Yeah, I had childhood traumas that I still deal with. One of the biggest things the day, I'll tell you about the day me and my mom got caught, for instance, by the FBI. This was back when, you could call a hack and the hack would come. Mm-hmm. And the hack ended up coming. And when we backed out, the hack almost hit this white guy's car. And the white, normally if you almost have an accident, you just, do like this, you keep it pushing. But the white guy got so angry. And then we didn't understand why he was so angry. So we get to Mondawmin Mall, and I'm going to get my hair cut. And this guy that the hack almost hit jumps out and yells FBI. And he had a good heart because he allowed my mom to go and take me into the barbershop while he questioned her. And later on, she had to come into the precinct. He wasn't trying to arrest her because she had me. But one thing I find myself, I always look over my shoulder. When I'm in a public place, I'm always looking around. Because a part of me is always thinking that that's coming back. We ran from the law for a summer. And it also cultivated a distrust for authority. And it's any kind of authority. I find myself rebelling because of that child, who went through that. And I've never sought therapy for that. Other things, one thing like growing up in a predominantly, a one-parent household, predominantly ran by women, I had the old school mom who would yell all the time and beat you. And that was discipline. And so, in relationships, I thought that was normal. And I really had to get therapy for that because I'm making these bad decisions with women. I don't like being yelled at all the time, but it felt so normal. I don't like to be disrespected, be dehumanized, but it felt normal because that's what my mom did. And my mom did it because she didn't want me to go left like my dad did. So she went even harder on me. And I had to break a mental cycle of choosing to be with the wrong person who showed these qualities that mom showed that wasn't really healthy. So that was like the most recent thing I brought up in therapy. And the beauty in therapy is, I'm the type of person who has like self-actualization. I always question, why am I doing this? Where's this coming from? What happened in my life to make me feel this way? And that's something that I would bring to my therapist. Hey, I just realized I tend to deal with this because of what my mom did, what, we went through as children, and I want to get out of this habit. I need help.
So talk to the teenager, because what I'm trying to do with Letters is to promote healing earlier, so that you won't bring all of that into your relationship in your 20s, into your 30s.
Yeah.
So talk to the teenager, maybe his dad or maybe his mom just like therapy. Like, we don't do that. We don't tell our business, or just tell him how it was with your first experience of therapy and just how much it helped, and
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, that's one of the biggest issues in many communities. I'm not even going to say the Black community, because I've had Hispanic brothers and sisters that I served with in the military who would say the same thing. Asian brothers and sisters who would say the same thing. And one of the biggest things is, no, we don't talk about that. And it was so crazy. Even white brothers and sisters who came from a poor demographic would say, I went through this as a child and I was told never to talk about it. And when the first time I went to therapy, I was very eerie. I was very untrusting of the therapist and what he would do or what he would find out about me. Because when you grow up in a household where you're told not to tell something, and then you finally tell it, you're just like, this is so uncomfortable because it is so out of the nature that I was raised to adopt. And I did not trust telling him anything. And my therapist, he's an African-American male, older guy, one of the wisest people I ever met. And I didn't trust him when I first met him. And it wasn't a thing of, is he trustworthy? But it was a thing of, I'm not conditioned to do this. I'm not, and as a guy too. And, if you're watching this, if you're a male, a lot of times you're taught to be quiet and be a man. You're taught not to say anything. You're taught to be strong, but silent. But what you don't know is when you get in a relationship, you have to do the total opposite. So, a woman or whoever you're with, this is a new generation, so whoever you're with may say, you have to open up to me now. And you have to learn how to do the total opposite of what you were taught growing up as men and as young men. So I had to unlearn that. And then once I began to unlearn it, that's when I began to have breakthroughs. When I really began to trust that this person is not telling me anything destructive and he's only trying to help. That helped. And his information, his guidance really, really helped me a lot when it came to me implementing certain changes for the better. And seeing a therapist really helped me out. It helped me with learning or understanding me more. It helped me with understanding direction, or my direction, my compass, and having certain things. One thing about therapy is you progress through uncomfortability. And I would be given things to do that I was not comfortable with doing. One of the things being, forgive your dad. Talk to him. Let him know that you forgive him for doing X, Y, Z. And I was like, man, I'm not going to forgive him. Let me go back to being quiet and strong. But the breakthrough came when I forgave him. So I'm gonna be real. I had 2 sex educations. One, it's my mom. My dad didn't talk about it, but my dad was locked up the majority of my life. My mom talked to me about it, and it was super uncomfortable. And she had like the real birds and the bees talk. Didn't water it down. My mom was a teenage mom, and she basically came to me, I don't want you to repeat this. And I, like, looking back on it, I appreciated her for it. It was very uncomfortable, but I appreciate it. And I had the same, and it's so funny because I had the same conversation with my daughter when I came back from basic training. And she was like, Dad, ew. And I'm like, look, I know you don't want to listen. I know you don't want me doing this, but this is more important than you being pregnant at a young age. So it's very uncomfortable for me too, but this is a reality. And I approached it the same way my mom did. And I had to laugh because I was that person, that little kid, like, oh, Mom, I don't want to hear this. But, you know, that was one. The second one, I got to shout out to my buddy Jordan. The second one was my buddy, like, hey, you ever hear this movie called Coffee and Tea on Me? I was like, what? No, I never did. What is that? He was like, yo, come to my house in 5 minutes. Hurry up. I was like, what? So, yeah, I had that was the second sex talk. And, you know, I'm not going to go into it because, you know, I want to keep it like PG, but it was, looking back on it, that second sex talk was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I'm sitting there like, ew, what's that? Like, look, this is what this is what that is.
Right.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm just having a very similar conversation to what I have with my daughter. And I start by saying, take your time. People will show you who they are. People will show you if someone is genuinely in love with you, you'll find out if you take your time. If someone is just trying to get in your pants, you'll find out if you take your time. Love and lust are separate, but it's such a great line in between. But in terms of speaking to a younger person, always protect yourself when it comes to sex. Abstinence is always the best thing. I wish I was a virgin up until marriage, but things happen. You think you know it all, and then you realize you don't. When it comes to lust, and this is for the young ladies, when it comes to lust, a young boy will always make an attempt to get into your pants. If he likes you, if he doesn't like you. Pay attention to who those young men are. When it comes to love, a young boy will want to get to know you. He doesn't care about getting in your pants. And he will show you that he wants to get to know you and that he wants to treat you right. Look for a young man who is respectful to you and to other women, especially his mom. Look for a young man who treats you well all the time. Not only when he's not around his friends, but all the time. Because that tells you something about his character. And look for a young man who always has drive and believes in a higher power. There's a lot of lost young men out there. and always protect yourself. You are young, or even if you're a little older, one thing you always have is time. Time to develop a person, time to grow with a person. You'll always, if you lust after a person, that is a path that leads to a dead end. But if you love a person, that's an infinite path.
So, oh, this is good. All right, let's see. So, do you feel, has your daughter ever expressed like her being depressed, or do you feel like she loves herself when she looks in the mirror? Like, does she feel worthy?
My daughter has expressed not being depressed, even when she is. I can't pick up on it, but my mom can. My mom has suffered from depression for a very long time, and my mom is also bipolar. Now, you got to think, my mom's 60-something. She was bipolar before bipolar was even called bipolar. I mean, growing up, she was just crazy gal. That's what it was, you know, but so my mom has like that sense to see when not only my daughter, but just like a lot of people are dealing with certain issues. She has like a sixth sense now. And so she's like, look, she's going through something. I know she's not comfortable with talking to you about what she's going through. Sometimes my daughter will. A lot of times she won't. But they're teenagers. Teenagers keep everything to themselves unless it's like super dire and they have to say something. But for the most part, she'll just keep it to herself. But my mom can pick up on when she's down. My mom can pick up on when she's going through a depression. And my mom will say, all right, ask her this question, answer that question. And if you get yes, yeah, she's going through it.
Right.
So, I mean, without my mom, like, I really would be the traditional dad. I don't know. Like, you know, because that's how it is with young ladies.
So she came to you, or for the girl watching this going through even bullying, even problems at school with boys, whatever, what would you say? Like, if they didn't think they were beautiful, like physically, or they felt down inside, like, what would you?
Well, this is what I tell my daughter. You are beautiful. Just because a group of guys don't recognize it, does not mean you're not beautiful. And even if you don't feel beautiful, like I tell my daughter all the time, you see Halle Berry feels like she's ugly. And she said it. You know, the most beautiful person in the world doesn't always feel beautiful, doesn't always think that they're beautiful. And when you grow and you mature, you'll have someone who will cross your path that will tell you you're beautiful until the day you die. A lot of times we base our self-worth and our self-perception on what people tell us. And that's the wrong thing to do. Base your own perception on how you think you look. Never think that you don't look good because of what they think. That's the worst thing and most destructive thing that you could ever deal with.
Right.
Because that's self-crippling. You're hurting yourself. Heck
As a
no. Man, let me tell you. When I was a teenager, no, I'd say between middle school, that's when I really started to discover myself. And I say that from what I just said in terms of people never determine your self-worth by what people tell you, is because growing up, I'm a chocolate dude. And in the 90s, being chocolate wasn't really the thing. I go to the pool all summer, I'm out in the sun, I come back chocolate. Like, I'm talking about street chocolate. So, you know, people be like, oh, you're dark skinned. And I thought that was ugly based on what people would tell me. You know, and being lighter was the thing back then. And I had to grow. I had to get away and grow and discover myself. In high school, I was very quiet. And in high school, I was very quiet because I had I would hear such negativity about how I look. And in turn, I remember like being in the band. Shout out anybody who went to the band, who was in the band with me, will know like my junior and senior year, our senior year, all we did was joke each other. Like that was just it, to roast each other about how ugly everybody was. Like and you know, it was fun, but at the same time, like looking back on it, it was really destructive because you never know who took it personal. And they would laugh, everybody would laugh, but still, you'd be like, you know what, subconsciously, that thing does something to you. And growing up, I didn't think that I was good looking. Growing up, I hated my complexion. And it took for me to leave when I went to college. That's when I realized how beautiful me being chocolate was. And not only that, how many other cultures tried to mimic this complexion that we had. And that's one thing that I also tell my daughter, because my daughter went through it, and I'm like, hey, no, let me show you a couple of things. How's this tanning place here? What are they trying to do? What color are they trying to mimic? You know, why do they, this culture talk about the darker people within the culture? The darker people are beautiful. This is what they stem from. When you look down your lineage, everybody was dark. And that's what makes it beautiful, because it's a lot of people who are lighter that try to get back to that. How money works. We took the econ class. I'm sorry, you were struggling. We took an econ class.
Let me edit this.
Hold on, what's up? We took an econ class in high school, but it didn't really teach us how money works. It didn't tell us about credit. It didn't tell us about savings. It didn't tell us about investing. It didn't tell us about dividends. A lot of things that would financially and economically elevate. And it also didn't tell us about joining money together, like a lot of other cultures do. The second, real history. I say that to say this. A lot of history that we were taught in school are based on lies. I heard a wise man say, history is taught from the perspective of the victor. And it's filled with a lot of lies. True history, that should be taught in school. Another thing is self-expression. Now, you have so many, you may have like an art club, other clubs, organizations in school, but they should make it a part of curriculum. And not an art class, but something tailored more to what a student may want to do. I took 4 band classes, and it was dope because I was so into music at that point. I was able to tailor my curriculum around my likes, around my passions. And I wish that the school system would encourage passions and what the child wants to do with themselves more. I would tell myself to take risks. Don't be afraid. One thing that I dealt with in college was, in discovering myself, I would have a fear of stepping out and pursuing my calling. And that's what I would tell my younger self. Don't be afraid to pursue your calling, Now, one, as a teenager, many teens don't know who they are. They don't really know what they want to do with their lives. But in the event that like you take steps toward what you are interested in and what you like, there's no telling where you'll take yourself. You know, I also tell myself don't do anything stupid, but like just don't fear taking that chance to become great. Because that was a huge fear of mine as a teenager. And like sometimes as an adult, because you get bills and you like, man, I don't know about doing this. I don't know about quitting that job to pick up this business. And you deal with the ups and the downs of it. But I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in it, the author would talk about how we make decisions based on two things. We make decisions based on fear and being familiar with a feeling. And so I would tell myself not to make a decision based on being afraid of something or a consequence. And I'd also tell myself the money doesn't matter. Just pursue it. One thing the game said, you idolize Melissa Ford, but Melissa Ford leaves that set and drives off in the Honda Accord. This is what I used to do with my kid. We sit down and we watch not the craziest, but we watch rap videos, right? And I say, hey, princess, why are they dressed in bikinis? And that rapper he has a coat, jeans, and boots on. It's obviously cold. Why she had that bikini on? She's like, I don't know, Dad. And I'll go, you know her name? Let's look her up. Then we look her up. See what she really does. See certain pictures of what she drives and all of that. And I'm like, this is a fantasy, what you see. It's smoke and mirrors. And we end up believing that that is reality. So now we live in an era where through social media, fantasy and reality are more blurred. I saw a Maryland, and this is so funny. I saw a chick who was like a social media vixen or trying to be, coming out of a social security office getting SSI. And it's a reality, like we play into a theme that they are trying to, or like a dream that they are trying to portray. And what you may see on your phone, on this computer screen, is not that person. These rappers, young ladies, young men, these rappers that you see who have these Bentleys and these cars, who have these chains on, the chains are gold plated, the chains are messed up. What's it, Wallow's jeweler? I forgot Wallow's jeweler name. Who like gives gold plated chains ain't even real. Said Soldier Boy was his biggest customer. Like real talk. And we look at these people and we idolize them. I mean, looking at the rappers, Akon said it best. He said a lot of these rappers, they'll come to a set, a fabricated environment with women whom they couldn't get if they were broke. And 9 times out of 10, they are broke. Because 9 times out of 10, a rapper's broke coming up. He doesn't really get rich until he starts touring and he starts popping. And he reaches something called a tipping point. And what a tipping point is the point where they become global. When Chance the Rapper became global and he reached his tipping point, Coloring Book had came out. But what about all of the other things prior to that? And he didn't really get rich off of the album itself. He got rich off of touring and his popularity. But you gotta understand the smoke and mirror and the economics behind that business. Because a lot of these vixens that you see, a lot of these rappers that you see are broke. They're broke. They're super poor. and they got to pay so many bills, and after paying bills, the black and white of what they really get back is not what you think they really are making. And you can even look them up as people outside of social media. And that will give you a better depiction, one, of what they really make, and two, who they really are.
You went to the military. Did you go straight from high school?
No. I'm not going to curse. My dumb butt. In my dumbness, I went into the military at 29.
Wow.
So I'm an old man in basic training running around with 18-year-olds. And they running circles around me. I'm like, like I was so old. And it was funny because it was like a 30 and over crew in basic training who they just treated like senior citizens. I was older than the drill sergeants. And like, they ain't even yell at us. They was like, just try to run. Just go. Just try. Try to do some push-ups. Thank you. Like that's what my military experience was in basic training. And it was rough because like my body was all broken up and but at the same time I learned some valuable lessons about myself. I learned about things that I can endure, but I can push myself through. So although it was rough, it was a very, very intimate look into myself and what I could get through.
Did you want to go straight from high school? Is that something you wanted to do?
Oh,
and that
no.
you would? Oh, okay.
Because remember, when we went to high school, 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
So I would have gone straight to the military.
Mm-hmm.
But when them towers hit and we saw all that, I was like, no, I'm going to college.
Right.
So I ended up going to college, and then later on I went to the military.
Well, talk about that. How you didn't let your fear just like overtake you. Like you still followed something that you really wanted to do.
So yeah, the purpose of me going into the military was to, one, I believed in the idea of freedom and protecting people's rights, protecting your right to do this, protecting an individual's preference to kneel during an anthem, protecting flag burnings, protecting government and anti-government stuff. Like you have to understand the consensus of most military people is we want to protect, we want to serve, we want to defend. And that's some core things that I really believed in that led me to serve. And if something jumped off, or if Iran jumps off, whatever, like, if they call me back, I'll go. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of dismemberment, crippling. It's just a different mindset. And you kind of learn that and cultivate it in the military, but it was always something that I wanted to do. And I have an uncle who was a retired general. I have another great uncle who was really high in the military, and he served in Vietnam, and we call him Sarge. Like ever since he got out of the military, we all called him Sarge. But he was the archetype for everybody in my family to follow in order to serve our country, and we all really believed in that. My greatest heartbreak was my first realization of love. So it was like a series of things that happened. I went my first love, and my first love, we went off to college. My first love started, I was trying to break up with my first love. Like, hey, let's be friends. I don't want you to feel bound to me since you're going to North Carolina and I'm staying in Baltimore. We're both going to college. Let's just be friends, and, you date, I date. let's do it like that. She didn't want to. So early into my first semester of college, found out she had a friend that she ended up becoming intimate with, broke my heart. And from there, like I dated, and I was like broken, you know, and from there it led me to, I broke up with like my college sweetheart, and I started messing with my kid's mom, and that led to additional heartbreak, but it was like just a destructive path. But one thing I didn't realize, or I didn't have the maturity to know, hey, I need to be by myself and get myself together emotionally and mentally. A lot of times, especially when you're young, take your time. When it comes to you dealing with anyone, get to know that person, because it only takes one mistake. Some mistakes you can walk away from, some mistakes you can't. Some mistakes you'll learn a lesson for the rest of your life. When you deal with heartache and heartbreak, properly heal from it. Make sure you are healed. If you have to get assistance, if you got to talk to a professional, talk to a professional. If the best way, you know, even if you can't talk to a professional, and the best way for you to get a person out of your system is to write. If it's to dance, to play an instrument, to exercise, to play a sport, do it. Whenever you feel that way, do it. If it's to pray, seek a higher power too. Whatever your higher power is, seek that higher power. Pray to that higher power. And also, I would encourage everybody to get help. If you need to talk to somebody, an adult who is like not telling you nothing destructive, only giving you positivity and light, talk to that adult. Seek therapy, pray. And do whatever you have to do constructively. Do an activity, pick up an activity, a hobby. That's what I would tell them.
Talk to the child that's growing up fatherless, and they might feel like it's their fault, or maybe it's just an issue they have with their mom has that is preventing it, or...
Yeah. A lot of my brothers that I talked to who grew up without a dad, they always blamed themselves growing up, thinking that it was their fault, and it wasn't. A lot of sisters too. And I had my dad when I was young. And then once I hit like 8, my dad was no longer in the picture. And I became fatherless for a very long time. I still don't have my dad. Like, he went to jail, but he was in jail for so long. When he came home, he was all messed up mentally, and I don't talk to my dad. That's not the person who I remember from when I was 8, and you know, now he is just no longer that person, or no longer even a father figure. And you have to understand that, 1, it's not your fault, and 2, you have nothing to do with the back and forth of your parents. We don't know what mom and dad did or went through as co-parents. And if dad's not in the picture, you really only get one side to a two-sided story. But never blame yourself because of what 2 adults did or failed to do. And also, find those father figures. Women, young girls, the father figure isn't an older man trying to get in your pants. Stop that. That is not where to go. Mentorship. Seek positive males. I remember growing up, when I didn't have a dad, I used to always, I used to want Uncle Phil from the Fresh Prince to be my dad. I used to wish he was my dad. And when I got older, I used to watch like the Reverend Run show, and I used to wish Reverend Run was my dad. And if you're out there watching, you probably understand what I'm talking about if you don't have a father figure, if you didn't grow up with one, you know. And my band teacher, Mr. Golf, shout out Mr. Golf. He's a father figure to so many young people, but I used to wish Mr. Golf was my dad at some points, you know. And he wasn't perfect, but you know, he was a great male role model. But yeah, it's not your fault, and I want you to hold on to those positive ideas of what a dad is and what a dad does in a family. And make sure you find a person, who embodies those qualities. Or make sure you are that person who embodies those qualities. So it's a dual thing. Yeah.
So what's your final takeaway that you want the viewers to see? And also, what's like that one big thing that you wish you can go back and tell your teenage self?
Final takeaway, never be afraid of yourself. Never be afraid of greatness. Never be afraid to step out of there. Never be afraid to step out of that box and say, and truly believe, yes, I can do it. You'll make mistakes. In any religious scripture, most talk about how you'll make more mistakes than successes. But when you reach that level of success and you are able to replicate it, it's the best feeling in the world. Never be afraid to do anything. And be smart with it. I'm not saying do something dumb and don't be afraid to do something dumb. Be smart, but never be afraid. Just don't be afraid of winning, and don't be afraid of losing. You'll lose way more than you win. But when you win, that's the best feeling in the world. When you're on to something, when you're on to winning, when you're on that path, continue to walk that path. And don't give up, don't stop. Also, love yourself. What dad did or what he didn't do, it's not your fault. Be brave. And one day you'll be that person to someone who you wish you had growing up.
Love it.